but you know you're in the world.
And then you're like, wait, how are these people going to tie back to like those other characters?
Like, oh, it's the brother.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know.
Okay.
Got it.
I will have to see if my editor will let me do that.
Okay. Tell her I want you to. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. We're just gossiping about books. Sorry. Yeah, like literally, I'm trying to
make sure all my
convince her
digital
to write
things
a
are
certain
off.
book.
Sorry.
And this is on ready to do anything?
Okay. Can we sit down and start? Do you intro us? Okay, great.
Oh, wow. Look at wow, this is adorable.
Isn't
I love
that
it.
cute?
I love it.
I'm so old. I got to get my reading glasses.
Ooh, awesome. Yay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight, and welcome to
Actually,
Zibby's
I'm
Bookshop.
back. I feel
So
like my
tonight
back
we have
is
Kate
to these
Spencer
folks.
and Marisa Renee, and we're discussing Grief is Love. So congratulations to the two of you.
Thank you.
Oh, we did it.
So we're going to have a quick conversation between the two of them, and then audience Q&A if you all have any questions, and then
ask away.
whenever you're ready.
Wonderful.
Yay.
I'm so happy to be here. As I was just saying to Marissa, I left all the tabs in from when I first read her book. And so you can see that I'm a big fan. So much, this book has meant so much to me, as I have shared privately as a fellow person with a dead mom.
Yeah.
But what's amazing about your book, and I think as we think about grief, is it's a universal experience. It's something that ultimately we are all going to go through or have gone through, and beyond just losing a loved one. So I prepared some questions, and we can work through some of these, open it up to you folks to chat. Hi, welcome.
Yay.
Welcome back.
Okay. Yeah.
So here's my first question. So your book, Grief is Love, by the way, we are celebrating the paperback release. So congratulations. That's a huge deal in the book world. So one of the first chapters of the book is about permission. And this, to me, as I was kind of thinking about our conversation, felt like a very important start.
Yes.
Because one, I just want to give ourselves all permission to feel grief in whatever way we're feeling it today. But two, that resonated with me so much, because I do feel like so often we have built up barriers, whether they have been imposed societally, from familial ways we've been taught, our own reasons, to not allow ourselves to feel and go through the process of grieving.
Absolutely.
I know I often preface my grief with like an apology, or like qualify my grief.
Or like someone says something about your mom, oh, she died, and then they're like, I'm so sorry. Like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah,
like,
it was 15 years ago.
Like,
yeah. It wasn't this way. That could have been worse. Yeah, I do a lot of like making excuses for tragedy. And I also think sometimes when we're grieving, we don't even know that that's what we're feeling. So just wanted to kind of start with your thoughts on how can we even begin to access our grief, and start first with allowing ourselves to create space for those feelings, because they don't feel good.
Yeah, no, they don't feel good at all. I actually am like very anti-grief. I don't recommend it at all. It is
nice to avoid it.
Yeah. So like if anyone in the audience, or I heard we're streaming this live online, if anyone out there in the universe has any suggestions for how to avoid grief, like I will absolutely take them. But since I couldn't find a way to get rid of it or get out of it, I eventually decided to give myself permission to be in it. And for me, like first and foremost, like what that looked like was just frankly not giving a SHIT about what anybody else thought about my feelings. You know, like at the end of the day, my mom was my mom. You know, that was my precious relationship. She was one of my best friends. She was an amazing mother who I also spent half of my life with her, taking care of her. So at the end of the day, I decided, like, why should I care about what anybody else thinks about how I deal with all of these complicated feelings that I have about her no longer being here? And letting go of other people's expectations, of other people's judgments, of frankly, a lot of the judgments that I've leveled against myself just made it so much easier to move through the worst parts of grief and like the really painful, messy, complicated pieces. And so I realized when I was writing this book for the second time, because the first draft, it wasn't very good. Thoraya from my team is here from New York, and she can attest it wasn't great. So when I sat down to write it for the second time, a few months before it was due, I realized that at the heart of my grief experience, and just like a real key to healing for me, was that concept of permission. So it is the first chapter in the book, and it is also the longest chapter in the book.
Oh, I didn't know it was the longest.
Yeah. And it's not because I got lazy after that, guys, but it just was like the most important piece to me. Like everything else for me stems from that chapter on permission.
Well, and it's interesting too, before we started, we were both talking about, I also lost my mom, cancer, and we were talking about we have similar relationships, I think, with our mothers. It was a fairly straightforward. We had good relationships with our mom, and they were mostly nice and healthy,
normal.
Yes,
parents,
yeah.
Which not everybody gets.
No, and it can be a lot more complex. And I think with the idea of permission, there's also the idea of allowing yourself to feel the weirder feelings when it comes to grief, like the relief. Sometimes we're happy, and that is very uncomfortable and not often still socially accepted.
Yeah, our family had a loss recently, and at the end, it was one of those situations where literally every day we were told this is going to be the day. They're not going to make it through the night. They're not going to make it until the weekend. And so, every day we woke up, we would call and check in. Oh, she's still here. Okay. Like, send food and, do the things we could from afar, and then check in again at the end of the day. Like, okay, we're still here. And the anxiety and the stress on top of just, the sadness, like it was so exhausting. And it was over 3 weeks of that after 18 months of a significant illness. And so, when they did pass, of course we were still sad, but there was a very palpable sense of relief.
Yeah.
Just to be out from under that heaviness and like extreme stress that comes when you're just like waiting for somebody to die. Like it is deeply unpleasant.
Yeah. I see people nodding. So I feel like that's it's a relatable thing, but it's grief is not just sadness, right?
No.
And it's not just the 5 stages of grief.
Oh, I hate the 5 stages.
I kind of do too.
Yes. You want to know why you do? Because they were not made for you.
Right. They were made for the dying person, right?
Yes. And like, I want everybody to know this, like any concepts you have about the 5 stages, or frankly, any expectations you have about grief and exactly what it's supposed to look like or how long it's supposed to last, like just get rid of all of that. Because you're going to make yourself probably a little bit crazy. But the 5 stages in particular were developed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross as she was studying people who were dying from terminal illness. And so these were the stages that she was seeing these people go through as they got closer and closer to death. Like that framework was not meant for those of us who are left behind after the loss of a loved one. And so I like to say that in every conversation as loudly as possible.
Yeah. Like, you know what? I don't feel like I just kind of learned this, and I thought I was like savvy about grief. And it's so interesting because if that's not for us, then do we have stages as the grievers? Like, do you have a philosophy of like an alternative to that, or is it messier than 5 steps or 5 stages?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think the alternative is making your own personal commitment to living your life in the midst of this loss, because like at the end of the day, the stages don't apply. Timelines are not helpful. This whole concept of getting over it, I think that's ridiculous, because what are you supposed to do? Like, was your mind erased after your mom died and like you don't remember all of these amazing things that you shared? And, and so I think what I ultimately decided was the path forward was by giving myself permission to feel however I need to feel, however inconvenient and annoying and painful and uncomfortable as it may be sometimes, and just being okay with that.
One of my favorite
Sorry, I
parts.
see friends.
No, one of my favorite parts of your book is in Grief is Love, is you just say, it does not, it's all caps. And I don't remember if you say you do not get over it or it does not go away, but you have an all caps moment in here where you're like, here's the truth.
I'm not gonna lie, I had a lot of all caps moments. My editor got rid of many of them.
That one needed to stay in. I'm glad it was
yeah.
still in there. Well, let's talk about anger, because you write about it. And that was also an emotion that I was like, oh, what the heck? What is this? Why is this the thing I'm feeling over and over again? Why am I like a rage beast taking it out on everybody in my life?
Yeah.
And this is one of the feelings that even though we're quote unquote allowed to feel anger, or like, you know, there's a whole conversation about leaning into your anger, but it still feels very fraught.
Yes.
Not just for other people to experience, but I think it's also very uncomfortable as a person to experience anger. So how did you recognize it when you first started feeling it? And how did you claim it? Or did you?
Well, I didn't recognize it.
Yeah.
This was, gosh, I'm trying to think timing wise. This would have been summer of 2021. So 13 years after my mom died. We were still trying to find a path to become parents. It was the pandemic. I was struggling to finish this book, and I was also dealing with like some lingering health issues from our pregnancy loss still from like the previous 2 years. And I was just like, I felt, the way I described it to a therapist was like, I just feel really heavy and like worn out. And no matter how much sleep I get, it's not enough. Like I was like, I don't feel right. And like, thank God for good therapists. Like she made me sit with it, and she asked a lot of really thoughtful and intuitive and like, frankly, like pushy questions. And eventually got me to a place where I was like, oh, like this is what it feels like to be really, really mad. Oh, I didn't know that like that's what anger could feel like, because I'm someone who it's just not something that like I wanted to identify with as an emotion, especially as a Black woman. Like, the last thing you want to be is like the angry Black woman, right? And it was through that, like it ended up being a 2-hour therapy session. Ooh. Yeah, it was
That's
intense.
Like a full tissue box.
Oh my God. There were no tissues to be found in the house after this.
Okay. Good. I thought you meant that there were no tissues.
No. Okay. It's funny because it was pandemic and Matt and I were both in therapy between the pregnancy loss and COVID and all the things. And we had in our guest room, this was like where you did your virtual therapy appointment. Like it was like set up, like you had the chair, place to put your feet, a spot for like your drink, and like the box of tissues. So I know exactly where I was when I had this conversation with my therapist. And once she helped me identify like what the feeling was, I immediately, and like I know I have a therapist friend in the room right now, like I felt so much better.
Physical,
It like I like felt the release. And one of the things that came up in the research for Grief is Love, and that has come up for me many times in therapy over the years, is we know that the only thing that makes challenging emotions easier is when we name them. Like that is how we reduce their power over us. And when she helped me figure out what was going on, and like I was able to like say it out loud, because for me, being angry at my mom, who was like amazing and also who'd suffered so much and who'd been dead for 13 years, like I was like, this doesn't make any sense. But it turns out anger is an incredibly common emotion, especially for bereaved children. Like, like those of us who feel abandoned by the people who've left. It doesn't matter what the terms are under which they departed this world. Like, you're left here without them. Yeah. And there is often a lot of anger and resentment that comes with that. So it was a journey.
My mom had cancer and was dying. She was dying from the diagnosis. And then her mom died in the middle. Like her mom died and then my mom died 6 weeks later. And my mom was dying and
Yikes.
grieving her mom. And I was so freaking mad at her because I was
How
like,
dare she
your
take up
mom-
time to?
yeah, I was like, you're almost 91.
Oh my God.
Deal with it. This is,
Oh my
not
God.
my
when
finest
my
moment. but-
no, same thing though. I don't know about the rest of you, but I lost my grandma. My mom's mom died when I was a senior in college. And she, like, I can see where I was on campus, and she called me and she was hysterical. And I remember thinking, like you're an adult. Like,
Yeah.
what? Like, I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you so sad? Like, your mom got to be a grandma. Like, I know my grandma. What is going on? Of course, now I'm like, wow, you are mean.
Right.
Like,
Yes. But also, and then the older you get, the more you realize
it doesn't matter.
it doesn't
all that.
matter.
Like,
Yeah.
it just doesn't matter.
Age is cruel wisdom with that.
Yeah.
I want to touch on your book and what you talk about, because you, I feel like, really helped me better understand grief as a privilege.
Yeah.
And privilege is so intrinsically involved in who is allowed space to grieve, who is allowed to be sad, who is allowed to be angry. You mentioned, as a Black woman, not wanting to be seen as an angry Black woman grieving. And I think this is so important to recognize individually, and also recognize the ways systemically who is and who is not allowed space to grieve. So I would love to kind of hear or talk more with you about what you want people to understand about how that influences who is allowed those spaces and access to their grief and allowed to grieve publicly, and who is not, and what changes need to shift both from an individual level, but also societally, to create a more equitable experience of grief.
Yeah. So this came up for me because, after my husband and I lost a pregnancy in 2019, I had been very public about where we were in our journey and, our struggles, and then was also very public when the loss took place. And so many people praised me for being vulnerable, and it always made me feel like just a little bit icky and uncomfortable. And I couldn't figure out why. And so, as a writer, I just started writing my way kind of through that experience. And I realized it's because not everyone is actually allowed to be vulnerable, because some people are already made vulnerable by society or by the circumstances within which they are living. And so when you think about the role the very necessary role that vulnerability plays in grief and in healing, and when you also layer on top of that the things that we know help to facilitate healing after a loss: time away from work, good physical health supports, mental health supports, counseling, all the things, and even just space and breaks from life to kind of be with your feelings and process what has happened to you. That is not something that everyone in this country has equal access to. And when you then layer on top of that the statistics around grief and loss and race, Black kids in this country are 3 times as likely to lose a parent before they hit 18 as white children are. Black adults, by the time you hit 30, we are, I think, 30% more likely than our white counterparts to have experienced the loss of 2 close family members. And when you think about the communities in which most people, frankly, who look like me live and have to try and heal in, you realize that both grief and healing, unfortunately, like so many other things here, are a privilege. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately in the context of what's happening right now in the Middle East, and thinking about both people who we know and are connected to in that region. And even, Claire and I share a friend who's a rabbi here in Los Angeles, and everything that he's trying to do to call attention to what's happening, he doesn't get to grieve. That's not an option for him. And relatively speaking, he is safer and in a better place than, the folks who are in Israel and Gaza right now. But nonetheless, he does not have room to grieve, because he's trying to survive and trying to help his community. And so I just think it's really important in conversations about grief and loss, that we create space for, what does it look like to give everyone what they need to heal?
Yeah. And the idea of having access to us, having it feel safe. To be vulnerable, you need to feel safe to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And
most people just don't get that.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk about joy, because as we kind of touched upon, there are weird feelings that pop up that aren't just like, I'm just depressed. And
there's plenty of that.
There's a lot of other stuff, but joy is an interesting one for me. And tapping into it in the wake of a loss, or existing simultaneously with your grief.
Oh, yeah. How
did joy come about for you?
So for me, some of it is just like, I was raised in a joyful household. Like my mom first got sick when I was 13, but that didn't stop us from having like the big family parties in the summer, and Christmas was completely ridiculous. And by now, like that woman would be almost done with her holiday shopping, which is obviously insane, but that is who she was. And like my house in high school, like that was the house where people would come and hang out, like after school on the weekends, the prom parties, all the things. And so joy has just been like a really big part of my life. Yeah. Like when my mom was dying, she was, and I mean like last couple of weeks of her life, she was trying to plan a joint 25th birthday party for me and like 50th birthday party for my dad. Because our birthdays are just a few days apart. And I mean, she died 6 weeks after I turned 25. So like literally was in a hospital room dealing with end of life stuff and ordering. I still have one of these. She ordered these chocolate bars that had like custom wrappers. I still have it. Do not tell my husband because he would be a little bit disgusted. But yeah, that's my kind of take on life based on how I was raised. And so I knew joy had to be a chapter in the book.
Yeah.
I also was like intent on finding research that actually supports this joy piece. And it exists. Fundamentally, the changes that are happening in your brain following a loss, like your brain needs some breaks from that too. And having moments of joy, even during like the lowest lows, worst parts of the grief, it absolutely helps. And so I try to maintain, frankly, like a discipline around joy when things are awful. So, my mother-in-law was sick for a very long time recently with stage 4 breast cancer. Yes, the same thing that killed my mom. It was very special. And one time when we were back in Wisconsin visiting her this summer, she was like too sick to spend time with us. Like it was like really bad. And so I was like, okay, like, we're here with our toddler who still has to be entertained by something. Like, what do we do? And in Green Bay, Wisconsin, there is, I honestly think, hands down, one of the greatest experiences in the world for children. It is this amusement park called Bay Beach, where they have collected rides from like different amusement parks from all around the country that like shut down over the however many decades.
Okay.
And it's like on the water, like it is absolutely beautiful. And the rides, like the tickets for the rides, because it is Green Bay, Wisconsin, they're like 25 cents or something. You know what I mean? Like, so it's cheap and it's perfect for little kids. I was like, we're going to Bay Beach. And so that's what we did. And like, we have some great family pictures from Bay Beach. Bennett thought it was the coolest thing ever. And, before we went to Bay Beach, we were on the phone with palliative care doctors and like lining up hospice and stuff. But like, we went to Bay Beach and it was lovely.
You did.
So fun.
Adding that to my list.
I mean, it's like, you guys, I'm not kidding.
I've never heard of it.
I think the roller coaster that they have there, I think it's from Graceland. Like, it is a very special place.
Wow.
They're not paying me to say any of this.
Right. What if this was all, this is all sponsored by Bay Beach. Okay, I'm doing a quick time check. Okay, it's 6:30. I have a few more questions. Before I do, I wanted to just pause, if this is okay. I'm just rolling here and open it up for any questions.
And I will answer anything.
Yeah. I also will.
Yeah.
But
Hi. So I'm a fellow writer, and I I've realized that often with writing, we sort of forget the meaning of words, right? Or phrases. They're used so much that we almost use them blindly.
Yeah, that's real.
And one of those phrases is safe space. And as writers, we create those spaces with our words for ourselves, for others. But when grieving, like, what does that look like?
It's a great question.
When we talk about, we need these safe spaces.
Yeah.
I don't know how much we often talk about or tell those around us what that looks like.
Oh, that's great. I love that question.
And, of course, there's going to be a million definitions.
Yes.
I think, safe space looks different for everybody. So in your grieving process, one, how did your concept of safe space change? And what is your definition now?
I love that question. Oh my God. And I love her words. Everybody should follow her on Instagram. So that's so funny. When you asked about how it changed, like I immediately had this visual of the bank where I worked when my mom died. Like I was on Wall Street during the financial crisis, taking care of a dying parent. It was a mess. And at the time, because I wasn't comfortable with any of this, like literally every day, this was after she died. Before my mom died, I had a hiding place in the back of Trinity Church on Wall Street. If anyone, any New Yorker, that was like my number one place to hide in the back of the church and like cry like a baby whenever I needed to. Because I worked on an open bank platform with a bunch of like old white guys, frankly, and me. And so that was my go-to before she passed away. And then after she passed away, my safe space was the basement of that bank, because every morning, and I talk about this in the book, but like every morning I went back to work 2 weeks after she passed, and I could like somehow get out of bed, get myself dressed, like get on the subway. And then when I would go to get off of the subway, like it was like being like punched in the face with a just horrible, debilitating panic attack. Like could barely walk from the subway stairs, like to the entrance of the bank, like, couldn't catch my breath, just like horrible. And like, mind you, trying to hide this entire experience. And I would go to the basement of that bank and like let myself have the panic attack, cry hysterically. And then a girl who worked with me, the only other girl in banking, she would bring me a latte and a cookie and a Xanax from my desk. And I would redo my makeup with her. And then I would go upstairs as though like nothing had happened. And so that was like the safest that I could come up with under those circumstances. And just given where I was in life at this point. And for me, what I've come to recognize now is that, and like that friend from back then, Alexa, she's still one of my closest friends. Like so many of my safe spaces are really about other people, like those people where like as soon as you see it, they just make you feel better. And like you feel like you can just like take a deep breath. Nobody has an agenda. Everybody's just kind of like happy to be together, and you feel good. And like you also know you're not going to be judged. Yeah. So like for me, I feel like safe space has become more about other people, where I can like show up fully and be a mess or be whatever I need to be. And like, that's okay. I also have found a lot of comfort in silence and in being alone, which is not something I would have considered at 25. I didn't realize I actually am kind of an introvert. So yeah, that's like, for me though, it's just like those places you go and like those people you surround yourself with they just make you feel like comforted.
You said something so interesting, which was like, how do you tell people what your safe space is? Because that was really hard for me.
Oh God.
And I'm not even sure sometimes we know how to articulate it, or you tell people and it's not what they thought. and they don't receive it well, and then you're in a whole other thing. Like, how have you
Can't deal with those
navigated?
kind of people.
Because I mean, that's one way.
Yeah.
But like, how do you communicate that? Or if you're like even
Oh.
feeling nervous to communicate what that is to you, to your people.
So one of the best pieces of advice, and I think it's in the book, that I got when my mom was dying, like when we were in the stage of, she's got 6 months to a year, and it ended up she only had 6 weeks. But like, when we were in that stage that we knew was the end, one of my friends' moms is a therapist. And, I was telling her that I was feeling like really just like guilty and like kind of uncomfortable, like not able to maintain social commitments, like flaking on things, not feeling like I knew what I needed. And she was like, just tell people that. She was like, send an email to, whoever you would count in that group. And at the time, like social butterfly New York City days, like, it was probably like 30 people who I emailed, all my closest friends. And I think the text of the email might actually be in the book. And I was just basically like, my mom is dying. I don't know what I need. I'm not going to be a like reliable friend or a good friend. I'm still figuring it out. Like, I want you to keep inviting me to things. Maybe I'll come, maybe I won't. I don't know. But like, I want to still feel included, even though I am frankly like lost. And the responses, like, even all these years later, like they were so kind.
It's amazing.
And this was from a bunch of 23 to like 26-year-olds.
Yeah, that's a tough.
You know what I mean? So it's like, if they could figure, and it wasn't, it was never going to be perfect, obviously, because no one, at that point, I think I knew 2 people who had lost parents out of my whole life. Right. So it was hard, but I think just getting comfortable, and this comes back to the permission piece, like getting comfortable voicing whatever you can voice, even if it's incomplete. I do think it helps other people figure out how to show up for you.
Yeah. Oh, that's such good advice. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. That was such a lovely question. Thank you.
Sorry, I saw it. Next.
Hi.
My name is Alicia, and I just want to affirm, first of all, I read your book a month before my mother was dying.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Multiple myeloma. She died in February. And
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Still very, very
Yeah, that's 5 minutes ago in Greek
Yeah.
land.
Yeah. So,
I'm sorry.
but there was something. There's a lot of things. First, about the privilege, about having space, like all of that. Very complicated. I'm thinking about those things now as Black women. Just like, we don't get the space to grieve. We move back up. We can't take the cape off. It's a lot of things. But one of the things that I love that you wrote, so I have a stepfather and I have 2 brothers, and I'm the oldest. I'm 43, and my brothers are 20-year different.
Oh, wow.
And so you pretty much saved my relationship with my stepfather, because I was feeling like that's my mom, and no one loves my mother more than I love my mom.
That's real.
And like the magnitude of that, and like, and even though my brothers, there's this, like, I remember her saying, she died of multiple myeloma. So we watched, this has been 5 years of watching, years. I mean, but you're never prepared.
Yeah,
I don't care.
No, it doesn't matter.
How many doctors tell you what? You're never prepared for that moment. It was just like, what? But I really appreciated when you talked about that, of like, everyone comes to love. They have their own relationships and how they love, and what I was seeing as the spouse, what I felt like he should be doing, and what he should have been doing and could have been doing.
Oh, yeah.
It was bringing a wedge, but thank God we're cool. I'm left here to carry him through.
Oh.
But it's, I needed that, because I really felt like, as the oldest, like, I grew up, my mother had me at 18.
Yeah.
So like, I know we've grown up together. That's my best friend. Like, what you doing over here?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so it was this moment, but I also just want to throw out there, I think grief, collective grief, all of these things, but grief sends you through an identity crisis.
Absolutely.
And how did you, you talk about this 13 years later, and, like, how did you get through the identity crisis? Because I'm like, quit the job. I'm like,
oh my God, yes.
All at once. Like, it's a whole newfound self of discovery.
Yeah.
Without the emotional person that has been
to help guide you. Oh, yeah. I'm familiar.
Yeah.
It's I mean, honestly, initially I didn't know that was what was happening. Like I didn't know that was normal. So like as a part of the Grief is Love research, like I went back to my old journals and notebooks and stuff from that period. Like talk about a gut punch.
Yeah.
And I just kept being like, I just want to get Marisa back. Like, but like Marisa was a different Marisa. Like between February 28th and February 29th, like it just wasn't the same person anymore.
Different, yeah.
And like I just didn't understand that, and nobody was telling me anything like that. So like I just kept trying to get her back. Like, where is she? Like this should be easier. What is going on? And so like instead of accepting that this is a transformative thing that has happened, like I am now Marisa, who like had this amazing mom who's dead, and like that's okay, and like I just have to kind of pick up the pieces from here and like decide who I'm going to be. I ran away from it. First, I was very good at gaslighting myself, as you know, because you've read the book. And then I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore. And I was going to write a book about grief, and it was going to be not sad. And I'd be a New York Times bestselling writer and like all of these wonderful things. But I still hadn't dealt with like the actual feelings fully. And I decided that if I couldn't have my mom here on this earth, I was going to have Barack Obama. And so I
go on.
And I'm still friends with him to this day. Still friends with both of them to this day. And I just ran away. Like I was like, I can't. Like New York was too much for me as a native New Yorker who then, was working on Wall Street and living downtown and back and forth to the hospitals uptown, like helping take care of. I was like, I can't be here. And so I ran away from it. And it was only through subsequent losses that I recognized that, oh, like this is a transformative process.
Yeah.
And you can try to ignore that, or you can say like, okay, this is going to change me because it's supposed to change me. And I get to decide what that transformation looks like. And so that's what I encourage people to do now.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I don't know if you feel this way, or like there was real like burn it all down energy for me after my mom. Like I was like, be a writer. I'm going to be a social worker. And I'm not a social worker. I didn't follow through with that. But I do think there is that
I was
identity.
Like, I'm going to take whatever I want from this world because this world took my person. Like, get out of my way. I'm coming for you, Barack. Like,
I love that it was Barack.
Literally.
Pick a nicer person. I mean, he is,
I knew what I was going for.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Wait.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I'm gonna let you do the directing.
He's been trying. Yeah.
Hi. I oftentimes in grief we have friends and loved ones that fail us spectacularly. And I know you wrote, there was one section, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a friend that couldn't come to your mother's funeral.
Oh yeah.
And I'm wondering today what your relationship is to those types of situations. And
it's a great question.
Second part, what does your grief look like today?
Oh, so many good questions. Okay. So the first part, that is that excerpt for folks who haven't read the book. That's from the chapter on grace. And for me, when it comes to like, there were like three people who I felt like failed by in that period of time. One was like some idiot I had been dating for like 5 minutes. So whatever, we'll just put him to the side. I do still see him from time to time, which is just hilarious. But anyway, so that was one. Like, the second was Alicia. Alicia was my roommate in college, and we lived together from the time we were 18 until we graduated. Our families did holidays together. Her mom, she lived near where we went to school. So like we'd be at her parents' house all the time. Like we were very, very like so close that her parents came to my mom's services. Okay. And at the time that felt like the ultimate betrayal. And what I learned from that experience was, when you really need something from someone in that moment, like try to convey it to them. Like I never, to be fair to Alicia, first of all, we were 25. Actually, she was still 24. And I never said to her, like, I need you to be at my mom's funeral. So that was just like a personal lesson that I learned. And then the other lesson that I learned is this one about grace. Like when Alicia failed me, and we'll put that in quotes, she knew very quickly that she was not in a good place with me. And she worked so hard to repair our relationship. Like this is another one that gets me choked up. Because like, you know, again, I think about how young we were. And at the time, she didn't come to my mom's funeral because she was playing soccer for the Irish women's national team and like had a game, which like to me, you know, I just watched my mom like have a seizure and die. I was like, I don't care about a soccer game. Like, but it was, you know, it was like a significant thing. And what she told me then, and there is a lot of truth in this. Like she said, people stop showing up after you lose someone you love. And like, so she had a plan to be the person who was there in like 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, you know, now like 20 years of friendship, whatever.
Oh, wow.
And so like, I think it's really important in grief to create space for both grace and forgiveness, because like life is long and you never know. And like, you don't want to deny someone the opportunity to support you in the future. And like, she's shown up a million times since then. And even things like, you know, that chapter wouldn't be in the book if she had been like, please don't tell people about that. You know what I mean? Like, but she was like, yes. Like, and like, I was even like, are you sure you're okay with like this thing and this? And like, yes. Like, she's like, I actually think you went easy on me. I'm like, stop. So yeah, like that's like, that is Alicia. She's got a lot of Catholic guilt. So yeah, I think that like leave room for people to repair. Like there's another relationship that has never made a comeback, unfortunately. And I think the line in the book is like, grief is a relationship crucible. Like you are going to know through experiencing it, like truly who your people are. And I just think that's an important thing to keep in mind, because you're right. Like people you love are going to disappoint you. And you just, you know, you will have to judge for yourself. Like, is this one where we can make it back or not? To your other question, where is my grief at right now? It is like, it has been a season for our family, like a very big griefy season. We just lost my mother-in-law 3.5 weeks ago. And this summer, this is actually probably the harder one for me to talk about. One of my cousins, she was 29, mother of 4, she went missing, and it turned out she had been killed by her partner. And so I like did a PR communications campaign around trying to find her and elevating her story. And we found her. It was just obviously not the outcome that anybody was hoping for. And so for my aunt, it's my mom's baby sister. This is the 4th child that she's lost. And like, she just lost a 35-year-old who unfortunately had lupus during the pandemic and like died from COVID. Like, and like, so that has been really hard. So yeah, I'm in it.
Yeah. It's I think it's
I'm in it, but I buy really expensive mascara. So it's okay.
for
I've
moments
learned.
like
I've
this.
learned.
But it never like it never goes away. Like it's always
Because then like
occurring,
even for
right?
my aunt these last few months, like she misses her big sister, and like
maybe.
and like I feel that absence too, you know, and it's just like it's just miserable.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, and I'm sorry if this is anyone in this room, but like now as a mom, like the idea of losing a child.
Oh no, forget
like,
it.
I can't.
Forget
I
it.
can't even say it out loud. Like
No.
So yeah, we're in it. We're recovering. That's what we've been telling people lately.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's really.
Speaking of like multiple losses,
Yeah.
as someone who's also just like untangling grief.
Oh.
When it comes up, like, am I grieving one person?
Yeah.
Like, how do you work through like?
Yeah, I
what
mean,
is that experience like for you?
For me, I'm a writer. I write almost every day. And that is like one of my number one coping mechanisms. And having spent a lot of time in therapy and also having a fair amount of friends who are therapists at this point, I feel like they have trained me somewhat to like think like them. So I try to recognize, to your point, like those moments, they're going to be complicated.
Yeah.
And they're going to be something both that like you have to sort through, and that's going to be challenging to sort through. And so once again, not to like beat a dead horse, but is that something we still say? I don't even know, but coming back to permission, like giving myself permission when, this summer, when all of these things were happening at once. And, I had a kid who was turning 2, and apparently when you turn 2, you just become like a small, I don't even know, like terror. I don't even know what to call it. Like he's amazing and wonderful and I love him so much, but also like there was just a lot to like manage with this little human, and work and life and sad things happening in the world. Like I just tried to give myself permission, not only to feel it and like create space for sorting through it and for taking care of myself physically and mentally, but also to say no to a lot of things. Like I was supposed to have a grief retreat.
That's right. Yeah.
Just a couple of weeks ago. And I decided, and this was one of those things where thank God for friends and thank God extra for like friends that are therapists, because I was bringing a therapist friend with me to the retreat. She was going to support the work, and she called. And this was when I think at this point we knew that my cousin had passed, and I was like supporting my aunt in other ways. And at the end of like a 45-minute call, she was like, so I just have to ask this question, and I'm not asking it to upset you, but I'm just wondering, have you considered not doing this retreat? And I was like, no, I had not even thought about that.
Oh my God.
But like, as soon as she said it, I was like, oh, I'm not doing this retreat. Yes. Like, oh my God. I was like, I need to go look at my contract. Like, oh my God, like this, like I'm not well. Like I should not be trying to like hold space for other people's grief. And thankfully the people I was working with were amazing. And they literally said, we were wondering how you were going to do this. It's like, okay, so everybody saw this except for me. Okay, good. Noted. The grief expert has lots of blind spots. And I canceled it, and I thought it was important to share that with people because it wasn't for a type A overachiever, Obama administration, like you can do anything. Like it was not an easy decision. Like it was a really hard one. And I was like embarrassed, frankly. But I knew it was the right decision for me. And it actually ended up, I was supposed to be at this retreat when my mother-in-law died. So,
also, you modeled such good self-care and boundaries for everybody else, myself included.
I was like, have I not only hit a wall? I was like, I'm like stuck in the wall.
Yeah. I mean, doing another time check. Okay, it's 6:56. Oh no, please. I'm not trying to. I just don't know what our schedule is. We can go for 5 more hours, is what I'm hearing. Okay,
I'm actually on a plane at 11.
Okay,
so
well, I'll drive you to the airport
because I'm crazy. No, it's okay.
Nice to meet you, Marisa.
Thank
Jennifer
you.
introduced us by text the other day. I'm Terry.
Oh, yay! Okay.
Nice to meet you. No, but I love your. I haven't read the book yet, but I am going to tonight, and I'm going to be done. I'm sure by the weekend. But I just want to make a comment about having space to grieve, and certain communities and people not really having it.
Yeah.
And I experienced both. Not having the space to grieve, and so I did it, and then having the space to grieve, and I did it. So when I was in my teens, I lost my twin brother, and then 2 years later, I lost my mother.
Oh, Jesus.
And my brain was going back and forth between who do I grieve first, because I was coming out of shock of losing my twin, and then my mom passed away, and so I was negotiating, and then I just let it. I just didn't grieve either one of them.
Oh,
I
my
just
goodness.
put it away because I was in survival mode. I was in college, and I was just trying to keep it together and continue living my life.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I went on for many, many, many years that way.
Oh my
and
goodness,
then
girl.
29 years later, after my brother, he was murdered. After he was murdered, the guy that did it to him died, and I found out about it, but I didn't even know the guy was still around because people that knew him were hiding it from me because I was looking for this guy, and my personality, I probably looked in jail.
Oh,
so
totally understandable.
Yeah. You know what? He's not around. So when I found out that this guy died, I found him on Facebook and I started stalking his page and stalking everybody he knew and writing messages but not sending them. And because I couldn't communicate with him because he died, I finally started grieving my twin.
Oh
the
my
grief
God.
process started like 29 years later, and it was so bad. And so because I was grieving, I was mad. I was mad at myself for not making it to this guy before he died. And then I just got mad at my dad because my dad is here, was still around. And I cut my dad off for a year. Like I would talk to him, but I was just I was grieving. It was really bad. And then my dad passed away. So I was saying that my dad passed away. It was horrible. It was unexpected while I was mad at him. But after my dad passed away, I actually took the space because I could.
So much to grieve.
But I took the space.
Lord.
I buried him. I went to bury him, came back home, and the grief process is very different as a, grown, professional woman who has a career, who has the autonomy and the space to step away from that, my career, and even, my friends and my social life. Like I had the time, the space, the resources to do it, and it made a difference.
Wow.
So that really resonated with me. Because
I'm so glad, Lord.
Stages. And I also worked on Wall Street.
Oh, wow.
And I am very impressed that you found like a safe space because I can't think of it.
To be clear, it was more of a hiding place. And the one other woman was only like a year and a half older than me. And so she was like, I got you. Like, I don't know anything about grief, but like, I know where the Xanax is. I know where the lattes are. Like, you're going to be okay. But yeah, it's a special place. I was at Brown Brothers Harriman.
Okay. I meant to today. I'm here in California now. So. But I look forward to reading this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that too.
Oh my goodness. Sorry, I know I saw it. Hi.
We're connected because of Lemons into Lemonade, and that's very much the way I manifest my grief, and I've been very proud of that for the last 20 years. But I was wondering, could you talk a little bit about jealousy and the jealousy that comes up now?
My eyes just
oh my
fell
God.
out of my head. Jealous? Yes.
It's just that has been coming up a lot for me now, and I know I'm sure it comes up with, of course, with pregnancy loss, with being.
Girl, don't get me started.
What did you say? A fellow person who's lost their mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fellow dead mommer.
Yeah.
And and just especially as thinking about becoming a mom and not and watching your friends who get a mother-in-law and a mom.
And when they're both super capable too, it's like seriously,
exactly. It's really hard for me at weddings.
Yeah.
Just all of that. So we'd love for you to talk a little bit.
Do you want to come for drinks after this?
Yeah. I mean, it is normal.
Yes.
I'm just going to chime in. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I want you to.
My mom died when I was 27, pancreatic cancer. And and that's been a long time. I'm 44 now. I will still resent people for
100%.
many things. Yes. And I just think that the great, like you talking about giving yourself grace and permission, I think jealousy is okay to feel.
Oh my God, it's totally normal and reasonable.
Like
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm like
straight up and
people who have amazing living parents and somehow thankfully this is not anybody I'm good friends with because I couldn't be good friends with them, but they then don't appreciate them. I'm like, I'm gonna punch you.
Complaining about their
I'm like, oh, your mom calls you too much. Oh, that's so sad. Really? No. So yeah, I feel you. I'm with you. I will say one of the things that has helped me through this process though has been identifying the moms in my extended circle who clearly have capacity and are happy to pseudo adopt a motherless person like myself. One of my girlfriends, she's been married to her husband, or she's been with her husband since we were in college. So like we've known him and his family for a really long time. And his mom is like such a stylish, like girly girl. And she's got these two like giant men for children. And so she has taken to like looking out for me, like sending me things. Like I get some of like some jewelry. Like, oh, this bracelet actually was from her collection.
That's so special.
I've gotten handbags. Like it has, and emotional support too. And it has worked out. It has worked out very much in my favor. Like Louis Vuitton and encouragement with Janet. Like, yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Did you look, I mean, I know you mentioned Barack Obama, but did you look for like I went through a weird phase where I was like trying to matchmake myself with like surrogate mom. Like it was more like I'd fantasize about other older women on the street, thinking like,
that's hilarious.
Like, oh, like how can I get into this person's life or be in a mother-daughter relationship with you?
I was more, I think I was like less subtle potentially. Like I think that's how I've ended up with the handbags and like the watches
and the beautiful bracelet.
Just like wonderful woman. I think by being like really open about the fact that, you know, sometimes it sucks to like not have your mom, especially when you're younger. And to your point, like the pregnancy loss and like trying to conceive, like and even becoming a mom. Oh my God. For folks who haven't read the book, we got a call one day, 5 years into our journey of trying to become parents. There was a baby. Did we want him? He was ours. He was born yesterday. Like, yes or no? And we were like, yes. And so we became parents in less than 24 hours with nothing, like nothing. Actually, that's a lie. I had a stuffed dog.
Most important thing.
Specifically, a stuffed bow dog that I got from the White House gift shop when I was still there in 2013. And this just happened in 2021. Okay. So that was what we had to take care of a newborn. And so I wanted my mom on like so many different levels. There was the like joy that like that chapter is thankfully over and we're finally parents. There was the like, oh my God, like how do you be a mom? Like, you know, like there was like that piece of it. And then there was just the very practical, you know, all of a sudden Matt and I found ourselves in an Airbnb all alone in another state away from like everybody during a pandemic with a 2-day-old. And 2 days into that experience where my husband, bless his heart, he'd never changed a diaper before. So he was like, I'm just going to stay up the whole time with you so that I can like learn all of this stuff. And at the time I was like, oh, that sounds great. Like, that's so sweet. Like what an evolved man he is. In retrospect, I'm like, somebody needed to be sleeping half the time because it was terrible. We both woke up, you know, we met our son on a Friday. We both woke up Monday morning, like in tears, like hysterically crying. Like he was like, I miss your mom. I was like, you never even met her. Like it was the
feelings were big.
Oh my God. The feelings were so big and it was so hard. But I tell people about it and then people are like, oh, can I help you with this? Can I watch Bennett? Can I like send you this thing? And I'm like, yes. Like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yes.
But
so you make such a good point. Like you have to say yes.
Yeah. You have to say yes. And some of the things some people want to do or like send you, like, you're like, I definitely don't really need that, but like, you're so nice. So like my answer is always yes to help. And I'm very pro asking for help. Like, I think this idea that we are meant to do every single thing in this life by ourselves is a very toxic part of our culture. Like, I think it's completely ridiculous and we need to get rid of it. So.
Yes.
I have a question. I don't know if this is too big. It's for both of y'all. You can break it down if you need to. But I'm just wondering, like, overall, how you see grief connecting to your spiritual beliefs. Did it make you more of a spiritual person? Did it make you less? Did it rock your world? You both lost your moms in your 20s. So I don't know if that was fully formed.
Oh no, I have thoughts for you. Don't you worry. So I grew up, and I mean, I don't know if people can see, like I wear a cross every day. I grew up in a very religious and like very progressive household. And like, you know, church every Sunday for like 3 hours, you know, Black Southern Baptist church. Like it was a lot. My mom was a Sunday school teacher. I was a Sunday school teacher. Like, I have also spent a lot of time like studying other religions. I have a degree in Middle Eastern studies from college. Like, I spent a lot of time deep in like Islam and Judaism. And so like spirituality is a very big, important part of my life. And I am often very angry at God, the universe, like whoever you want to blame. And I decided pretty early on that like, if I was going to continue to be a spiritual or religious, whatever person, like I needed to be okay with being really mad. Like after our pregnancy loss, like I took this cross off and it was a long time before I put it back on. I was like, I am so fucking pissed. Like how did this happen? And sorry, I hope I'm not in trouble for using that word. But I was literally like, how dare you? Like, have we not been through enough? Yeah. Like that was in our minds, like that was our last opportunity to become parents. So yeah, for me, it is an evolving journey. But I think especially in this world, like as broken as it is, and we are being reminded of that right now, like if you're going to be a spiritual person, like you need to be comfortable being honest with, God, the universe, whatever, when things are messed up. Yeah. Like, or at least that's what works for me.
I was raised, I would say Massachusetts progressive Christian, which is Congregational Protestant. And my mom was very spiritual, but really kind of more in tune with nature. So for me, that is where I find spiritual connection to whatever else is out there, and to my mother. I don't let my kids kill spiders because I think my mom is visiting me as a spider. Stuff like that. But I think what grief has reinforced in me is like a connection to humanity and Absolutely. Empathy and human connection. And I tend to think a lot about the gifts that have grown out of losing my mother, and then other losses. I lost a good friend to cancer like 7 years ago. And both of those experiences were and then millions of other things, right? We all go through tiny griefs and big ones, but my life wouldn't be here right now. Like I have in my thing, like I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't do the work I do. Like it's just such a weird.
It's almost hard to like even conceive of what life would look like if that hadn't happened.
So, and I don't know if I would be the person I can be to my friends if I hadn't gone through this loss. I don't know. So that is when I kind of existentially examine things. That is what I kind of draw from it. But those are in the times when I'm feeling like grace about it. When I'm feeling pissed off, sometimes, like you said, you just have to be. You have to create. Be mad. Yeah. Hi, welcome. Okay. Does anyone else have any other thoughts or questions they want to share? Thank you all.
Yes, thank you so much
for creating
being
such
here.
a kind space. Marisa, thank you for writing such a special book. Truly, no, this is an honor. This is such an important, special book to me. You are so. Thank you for having me. And you'll be signing.
Right. Okay. I have markers. Okay. Oh, I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
Sophie.
I love that dress. You look beautiful.